Welcome. Thanks for joining. This week, I'd like to focus on the Haggadah Shel Pesach and relate what might be my favorite Dvar Torah on Pesach. Every year back in my shul in Rochester, New York, we had a group of school children and their parents from the Reform Temple. Every year they would make the pilgrimage to the Orthodox shul to find out about Orthodoxy and about our shul. And it was always around Pesach time, just before, just after Pesach. And after a few years, I could almost write the script of the questions that they would ask. They would look around the shul and there were things that for them were very unusual, such as the mechitza. They would always ask about the mechitza. But another question that they had was something very particular about that shul. That shul has a very large candelabra, very large light fixture, which is in the middle of the shul and which has the signs of the Zodiac printed on glass around this chandelier. And that would always catch their attention, almost first thing. And they would say, what on earth are the signs of the Zodiac, what we call the mazolos? What are they doing in a shul? Does that have anything to do with Judaism? And of course, I told them it was a great question, because it is a great question, because I think many people who would walk in that shul would be wondering, what does a Zodiac have to do with a shul? So I would say that it's a great question to ask right around Pesach time. But let's first begin with the Pesach story. For 10 months, Paroh was being beaten down. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, by land, by air, and by sea, was showing Paroh that he was not the God, was showing Paroh that his beliefs were inconsequential and that he was the power. And you find in the Psukim that Paroh increasingly is coming around to that fact. He's coming around to the truth, or at least he's being beaten into submission. After the 7th plague, he says, Hashem HaTzadik, va'ani harashayim. God is just, God is righteous. Me and my people, rashayim, evil. After the 8th plague, Arbe, he says, Chatosi la Hashem, I've sinned against God, v'lochem, and to you, Moshe Rabbeinu. But when it came to the 9th plague, he says nothing. He gives in because he has his arm being twisted behind his back. But then he comes back to himself and he defiantly says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech me'alai, get out of here. I don't want to see you in here anymore. What happened? What was this change? The next time I see you in here, you'll be dead. If you come in here again, dead. What was he thinking? Yes, the pasuk says that Hashem hardened his heart. But what was he thinking? And equally puzzling is Moshe Rabbeinu's response. You would think that Moshe Rabbeinu would say, are you kidding? After 9 plagues, that's the way you're talking to me? He doesn't. He says, you know something? You're right. So it should be as you spoke. So it will be as you spoke. What's Moshe Rabbeinu's response? So the Aruch HaShulchan, Bechil Michal Halevi Epstein, was a great halachic authority. He wrote a beautiful work on the Haggadah Shel Pesach called Leil Shimurim. And in it are some glorious essays on the Haggadah. And here's his answer. He says we have to appreciate what was going on in the mind of Paroh. The plagues, each one, our sages tell us, took a month. The plague itself was a week, but there was the lead up and there was the follow through afterwards, the discussion between Moshe Rabbeinu and Paroh. Each one took a month. The last of the 10 was Nisan, the month we're in now, the month of Pesach. So they started back in Sivan. And Paroh felt at an incredible disadvantage. Because what did he believe in? Paroh, we know. Paroh believed in the Zodiac. Paroh believed in the forces of nature. Paroh believed in the influence of the stars. And the head, or the first of the signs of the Zodiac, the first of the constellations, is that of the Taleh, that of Arius, which is Nisan, which is March 20th through April 20th. And that was the head of their totem. That's where they derived their power. So here he is 10 months out, and he's battling this God of Moshe. And he gets banged from pillar to post. First, the Nile is struck. The air is struck. And he's losing. But Paroh felt that perhaps if he could hang on, he might be able to come out victorious. I'd like to compare this to the great prize fighter, Muhammad Ali. Remember Muhammad Ali? Muhammad Ali had the strategy of rope-a-dope. He wasn't the strongest fighter in the ring. And therefore, in order to compensate for that, he needed some very smart strategies. He was probably the smartest fighter in the ring. And his rope-a-dope strategy was to lay back on the ropes for 9-10 rounds. Lay back. He had a very strong stomach. And the stronger fighters would pound away at him, pound away at his arms, pound away at his stomach. And sometimes they'd be flailing in the air because he would lie against the ropes. And then, when he saw round 8, 9, 10, when he saw the stronger, often bigger fighter get tired and start dropping his arms, he knew that was the time. And then Ali would spring off the ropes and he would pummel his very tired adversary. Most of the time he was victorious. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, that was Paroh's strategy. After a few months went on, he began to see daylight. He began to see, maybe I can hold out until the 10th round. Maybe I can hold out till Nisan. Boy, it got tough. 5, 6. After 7, he thought it was all over. Hashem HaTzadik, God's righteous, Ani v'ami ha'rishayim. I'm going down. I can't handle this anymore. Notice, it's very interesting. After the 8th, he wasn't so strong about that. He didn't say Hashem HaTzadik. He just says, Chatasi la Hashem. I've sinned against God. There began to build within him the idea, 1 minute, maybe I could hold out. And then, after the 9th plague, which is in the month of Adar, he is really humiliated and really hurt by the plague of Choshech. But he stands up and says, he looks around and says, I'm still here. And my country's still here. And we haven't been defeated. And it takes a month for the next plague. That means that's going to put us into the Taleh, into the month of Arius. That's the head of our totem. Maybe we could win. And therefore, he turns to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, here it is. I'm still standing after 9 rounds. I'm going to spring off the ropes. I don't want to see you again. Get out of here. If you do, you're finished. Moshe Rabbeinu looks back at him. He says, you got to be kidding. You think you've been waiting for the month of Nisan? You don't realize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, the God, could have finished you off back 10 months ago? Of course he could have. You were waiting for Nisan? You were waiting for the Taleh? That's what God was waiting for. Because God wanted to show his power. And God wanted to show that Klal Yisrael, our people, are lema'ala min hazman. We're above time. We're lema'ala min hamazal. Or their influence of the mazolos? Yes. Do the signs of the zodiac mean something? Yes. Not the way Gene Dixon would have us believe it. But there is influence. The Sfarim talk about it. Person born in different months, there are differences. But Klal Yisrael rises above that. And we're taught Ein Mazol Yisrael. There are really no mazolos to Klal Yisrael. Because what happens to us, both collectively and individually, is based on our behavior. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says to him, this is what God is waiting for. This is what we're waiting for. So it is, as you said, you're not going to see me in here again. It's over. Nisan is coming. And hence, my friends, in our Haggadah, when we start talking about in the introduction to the mitzvah of retelling the story of the Exodus, we say, Yochel me Rosh Chodesh. You would think that the mitzvah of saying the narrative of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim starts in Rosh Chodesh. Yochel me Rosh Chodesh. Why would you think it should be Rosh Chodesh? It didn't happen for Rosh Chodesh. Explains the Aruch HaShulchan. It's because it's all about the Taleh. It's all about Nisan. So maybe the mitzvahs from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. I don't know if it meant to say maybe it would be the whole month or the Rosh Chodesh alone. Maybe that's when it should be. Talmud Lomar Bayomahu. No, it's on that day. What day? The day they took the Taleh. Klal Yisrael took the Taleh and slaughtered it. And then Yochel Bayomahu, you think it would be during the day? No, it's at night. It's only at the time. It's only when you have the matzah and the moror and all the attendant mitzvos lying in front of us, that's when we have the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, because that's the ultimate. He explained so beautifully. That's the Tokvo Shel HaChodesh. That's the full moon. 14th, 15th, going into the 15th. That's the full moon. That's where the mazel, the constellation, is the strongest in the middle of the month. And that's where the Jew sits down at the table and eats Pesach, and eats matzah, and eats moror, and all the attendant mitzvahs. Again, the Vilna Gaon says 64 mitzvahs. And we say, is there influence from the constellation? Of course there is. Doesn't apply to us. So I would look back at this group of kids and their parents, and I would say, is there influence from the mazelos, from the constellations? Of course there is. But we're standing here in Shul, and we're davening to Hashem. We have a relationship with Hashem. The stars don't influence us. We have a direct line. It depends on our behavior, our Torah, our mitzvahs, and Hashem's response, direct relationship with us. So Paroh was very excited about coming to Chodesh Nisan. So is Moshe Rabbeinu. And for all time, we learn. We sit at the Seder, we do all the mitzvahs, and we learn that Ein Mazol Yisrael. It's about Torah, it's about mitzvahs, it's about being the people of Hashem and fulfilling His will. I think very beautiful Devar Torah. Maybe you want to share it at your Seder table. Have a good Shabbos. Thanks for listening.